Welcome to Imperial Interlude. With me is Ralph. Hello, Ralph.
Hey Tim.
So, this is the third episode of The Bad Batch.
Yes.
And one thing we can say for certain, they go for the standard TV format of 30 minutes, as you
Yeah.
have suspected. I
Yeah.
find that a bit disappointing, but then again, it's very reasonable because it's a computer animation and you need a certain amount of time to render the pictures, simply
Mhm.
put.
Yeah. I'm wondering as well, and this is just a general feeling, is I wonder if we'll get some variation near the end of the season, with it only being 16 episodes supposedly. I wonder if they will stretch out and have bigger episodes, slightly longer episodes, or maybe sort of the Mandalorian way, long episodes, shorter episodes. Within it,
Possible.
you know.
Maybe
So,
we get some double features
mhm.
near the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, we might get a season finale that's actually 2 episodes in length, but is only 1 episode if that makes sense.
Yeah, the first episode was also very long compared
Yeah.
to second and third.
Hmm.
So, we left our brave soldiers going off from the planet where they helped the renegade wreck escape,
Hmm.
and they are off to a bad start.
They have some engine trouble, I think, can be probably described, couldn't it?
Yeah, I very much liked how the dialogue between the characters is something that seems to leave things to be desired. You told me there were no immediate problems. Life support is good.
That's tech. That's tech, though, isn't it? It's the sort of the the technical character
Yeah, the
being
way he
very much.
prioritizes what counts
Yeah.
as a big problem tech wise is very much different than I and you may put things.
Yeah, I was going to say, he sort of prioritizes. Well, we've still got life support, we've still got oxygen,
Yeah.
So,
Oh, everything's
well,
fine.
we're alive.
He's a bit of like this cartoon character where the dog sits in the fire drinking his coffee. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, definitely, just very much of the analytical brain's probably the best way to describe him.
Very
Is he's very much,
unemotional.
yeah, yeah, compared to the other clones. And then of course you had the whole the of course Wrecker in the beginning as well, being hungry, and Omega offering him the food, and then him sort of being yanked up by the neck by Hunter, going, she's got nowhere to. You're giving her, you're taking her food, and she's got nowhere else to sleep, which sort of
Yeah,
set up a bit of a plot later on.
Wrecker being a very childish or childlike character who acts and then thinks, and but to his credit, actually, when he starts thinking, his thinking goes a long way.
Yeah, seems to have it's sort of taking it from literature a bit. Wrecker reminds me a little bit of George. I think the character's called George from Of Mice and Men. I don't know if you've ever read the Steinbeck book, which is you have a guy called Lenny who was very intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
but with him he has another character called George who's quite slow.
I
And
think I've
it's a
seen the movie.
yes, you might have seen the movie with John Malkovich, and that's very much
Oh yeah,
occasionally who Wrecker reminds me of a bit. Is he's very straightforward. He's very much of that childlike, yeah, in his development
mm.
sphere, yeah, but not fully childlike. So he's not,
He's not on the intelligence level
no,
of a child, but a emotional level.
yes, yeah, it's very much that. But when he puts his mind to things and and everything else, his heart seems to be in the right place.
Yeah, in
You know,
that way, he reminded me a bit. What's that character called again from the Goonies? Huge,
or
large,
Crunch.
crunch.
No, no, I know who you mean. The
The,
brother that was
yeah, the
locked away.
deformed one.
Yes, I think it's Crunch. I think I know which one you mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
the one that Chunk sort of meets in the basement.
yeah, and they get to be friends. And I think he's large,
Yes.
but Don't quote me on that. Nonetheless, so
Sloth.
Sloth, yeah. the
IMDb
very
for the friend.
Sloth.
Yes, sloth.
Yeah,
I think
so
it's
but we see that he understands what Hunter is telling him, and
yeah.
so then things go from bad to worse because the ship is a bit more damaged, as
Mhm.
it seems.
And they end up crashing on him. Well, they end up falling out of the sky.
Yeah, it's an
On the,
let's call it a successful landing because they're able to
yes,
walk away from it.
exactly, exactly.
It's not a
But
good landing, but a successful one.
any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, I guess.
Yes. And for various plot reasons, things are broken and damaged and need replacement, and there is one and only one replacement on board,
Yes.
which
So
then gets nicked
yes, by
by
an alien that's
by a
into
weird glow creature.
yes. But then on the flip side of that, you've got the other story, which is where the title comes in, because the title was called Replacements,
Yeah,
dealing with Crosshair
yeah, where
and
a
him.
subordinate to General Tarkin
Mhm.
is bringing up new conscript soldiers that
Yes.
need to prove themselves to be of any use to the Empire and to show how they are better than clones.
hmm Now, this was a now before getting to it. Now, did you think, and this was my thinking from it, that the story with the Bad Batch crashing, yeah,
Mhm.
wasn't the main story in this episode? It was sort of a side story, shall we say? They've flipped between the two, but the main story in this one, or the main sort of plot thread when it started, was to dealing with that replacements. That whole story arc
I
was sort of
think
the main.
they are both more or less 50-50 because we have character development in the group that is the
Yeah.
Bad Batch, and we have very substantial changes in the greater scheme of things that is the Imperium to come.
Yeah, just seems an interest in that. That
It's an
just from
episode
my
of plot devices, let's call
yeah
it
yeah.
that.
It was just from my feeling when I watched it. It just I felt the more powerful of the two stories.
Yeah, with a greater impact for the story
Greater
later
impact
on.
for the story later on is the one that was going on with Crosshair, especially at the beginning where we see Crosshair and they're souping up that chip again,
Yeah,
weren't they?
which is a thing I think will lead to problems, events later in the series. Because we have seen him getting this treatment 2 times now. I'm guessing this is something he now needs regularly, so that his chip keeps working in the order they want. And I can foresee a episode where he's being cut off from getting back to Camino for a longer period of time, and then the chip starts losing energy again, and
Yes.
maybe he's then being a turncoat all over again.
Now, yeah, maybe rejoining the Bad Batch, it's
And
at some point.
additionally, the way that Omega is talking about him and saying, yeah, he's under the influence of the chip, it's not his fault.
hmm
She's still defending him, even though he tried to kill her.
Yeah, or kill them. So I don't think he took a shot at her, did he? Because she was the one that saved them.
Yeah, but I guess
I,
he would
I, I
shoot at
guess it's
her.
the whole shooting at all of them, shall we say, is the sort of the thing, isn't it? It's he was trying to stop the Bad Batch from escaping with her, so by definition she's part of that that group. But what was interesting was the name of the project. Now the subordinate or the other gentleman that came in, because did you know Tarkin had been promoted now?
Hmm.
He was called Grand Moff in the episode.
Yeah, you're right.
So he's got his his promotion, but the Admiral was Admiral Rampart. That's the name of the character they introduced, who's going to be, from sort of reading and stuff, as he's going to be the sub antagonist, because we're not going to see Tarkin all the time. So he's going to be like the lead Imperial one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the project was called War Mantle, which is a reference to Rogue One.
Oh, this
Right.
I didn't get.
When Jyn Erso is searching for the plans, on Scarif,
Mhm.
and they're running through all the files, one of the files that they come across is called War Mantle.
Well, that's definitely slipped past me.
It slipped past me as well until it was pointed out later on when I was reading. But yeah, because one of the plans is called War Mantle. There's lots of different plans, and then there's loads of them. Because one of the other plans is called Black Saber, which may be a reference to the Dark Saber and how to get a hold of it. We don't know.
Very much possible, but we won't try to go
Analyze that too
way
much.
off on. I think some things could be called red herrings or simply nods to anything else in the universe.
But this, I think, was a nod to that sort of file that popped up in Rogue One being called War Mantle, because that's the name of the project, which was the conscription soldiers, to try and depart from clones.
Or I have got a bit bigger theory. There is a database where when anything is put into somewhere, when something gets a unique name, they put a small description on it and say, War Mantle, project name Imperium for XX. And every writer who needs some inspiration simply dips into that database.
Possibly, yes. But what was also interesting about that group, which I've seen mentioned, I don't think it is, but that group maybe, and it hasn't been said anyway, but maybe, and I think people are drawing conjecture, of drawing lines that aren't there, that's the forerunner to Inferno Squad.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely the beginning of the conscript model for stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And we then get to meet these characters, but none of them are named yet.
Not
And
that
then,
I had heard.
And then, of course, their Crosshair has been put in charge of them.
Yeah, and they are put into the old quarters of the Bad Batch, which seems to make him feel uncomfortable a bit because he's looking a very strange way to the markings Crusher makes on the walls.
Yeah. But also, there was that animosity, wasn't there, as well, between the humans or the conscripts and Crosshair being in charge, where one of them basically comes out and says, "I'm going to be in charge."
Yeah, the humans seem to have a feeling of superiority in towards the clones, which is a thing that gets hairy for one of them later on.
Yes, because they are basically sent on a test run for one of the better terms.
Before that, we get another sneak little info about the Cameans, the long neck turtle people,
the cloners.
Yes,
Kaminoans.
Kaminoans. This is a worse title because they are expressing serious problems if this project would succeed and the need for clones would go down.
Yes, so there's the underlying, but also
and there's a reference to original genetic material from Jango Fett degrading, and they would need material from, how did they put it?
Was it a new host?
I don't think it was a new host or something along those lines, first generation or something.
Yeah.
Basically, pointing at we need one of the original Bad Batch as a donor for new material.
Yeah, the thing is Lamassu replies that they must move to the next phase. So it's Nala says that the material's downgrading. Jango Fett continues to degrade.
Degrade.
Yeah. Lamassu replies that they must move to the next phase, the development of a superior clone, which will secure Camino's relationship with the Empire. Nala says they need a new genetic source and that the clones they need will not return willingly, hinting that it's the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
But is it all of the Bad Batch, or is it one specific member? And is that member Omega?
Well, since the phrase is we only need one, and they would have access to one that is on their base, I'm guessing they're targeting for one of the three that are still absent.
Mm-hmm.
With the highest possibility being Hunter, I guess.
It's either Hunter or Omega, but I think it might be Omega. I think there's something with her genetic makeup that's very unique, whether it be she is a female Jango Fett, and has, as close as she can be to that genetic sort of that genetic marking. So maybe she wasn't she's a clone like Boba, which means she's aged naturally.
Yeah, I think that's a very high possibility, and I think this will be important plot later on in the series. This is going to be a story arc that's in the background.
Oh yeah,
and will be developing over time, and sometime around 2/3 of the season 1 there will be some bang
revelations. There'll be some revelations pop up, definitely. The other thing I saw, and this is going off last week's episode, is the references to chain code.
Mm-hmm.
They were first made references in The Mandalorian. When Boba Fett brings up his chain code to show that he was related to Jango.
Oh yeah.
That's where we first heard the term chain code.
Again, I'm saying there's a database for this.
Yes. But yeah, so we get them crash landing, and we get the sort of the beginning of the sort of the special forces unit with Crosshair. Sort of that's the beginning two parts of this story, or this episode. When they're working, as I said, when they're working on the ship, they encounter an Ordo moon dragon. They basically they're working on the ship, and the capacitor's pulled out, so they are in the cockpit, or Omega's in the cockpit, sees the creature holding the capacitor, and then it's Tech who identifies the creature.
Yeah, and after that, the Hunter says, "I'm going after it," and Omega convinces him to take her with him for whatever reason.
Indeed, and they're wearing breath masks, not similar in design, but similar in the way that Solo, Chewie, and Leia wore in the asteroid field thing.
A very small respirator that just covers nose and mouth.
Yeah. Then back on, with the Kaminoans, they are basically this elite squad, because that's what Rampart sort of denoted as the first Imperial elite squad, are given a test of loyalty, I think Tarkin calls it, where they
something he wants to see if conscripts do better than the clones had, and if they would to follow orders as they are given.
Which means they are sent to wipe out Sol Garola's camp.
Yeah, it's a redux version of the mission that led to the defection of the Bad Batch.
Yep. And they're sent off, and there's, of course, some tension on the ship, and that's where one of the conscripts, or one of the volunteers,
one of the humans says,
"Yep,
why is he in charge?
Yeah.
I should be. I'm way superior." And Crosshair is very cold, emotionless, and says, "Yeah, I'm in charge."
It's very much it got feeling that he's very much robotic
Yeah,
in his feelings, more than, I think Crosshair was probably the more clinical of them all when he was part of the Bad Batch, yeah? But he seems to be have gone more and more clinical, and the whole good soldiers follow orders type of thing. That programming seems
yeah.
to have,
He was clinical but not unemotional, because
yeah,
he had some outbursts, and the I forgot the name of the glasses again.
tech.
Tech is the one who is more or less devoid of showing any emotions, even
Yeah.
though he's doing this on a neutral level. But now Crosshair is actually seemed like he's suppressing every emotion he has in any way. And that's how they find the camp that is on its way out for
Yep.
looking to rendezvous with Saw Gerrera.
Yeah. So on the planet, on the with the remainder of the Bad Batch, it's during that time when they're tracking the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That Omega mentions that bit about Crosshair, and that's where Hunter sort of gets a little bit
She
annoyed.
finds his weapons chest because they are looking for the spare part that's just
Yeah.
before the dragon comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's he gets angry with him, and he's angry at that himself, that he had to leave him behind. And then Omega mentions that they'll find a way back to him, which sort of denotes something that might happen in an arc later on, where they do possibly go either to try and rescue him, or or something. I think it's sort of laying that little bit of the little foundation.
Yeah.
For later on, and then we sort of have the attack on the Sol Guerrera base roughly just after that scene, and that's where we see everybody basically Crosshair killing people. The other troopers seem to be killing people as well, but they stop. Crosshair stops the shuttle from taking off and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and they stop firing after they've killed all people who are wearing weapons and uniforms, and only
Yeah.
the civilians are left. And
Mhm.
at that point, things get dark.
Yes. Where
So
they are questioning the civilians and the one trooper that's left, because there's one trooper left as well, isn't there?
yeah,
Sort
but
of,
she's getting executed right off the spot when she says, "No, I'm not going to tell you." Which I think Crosshair comments something like, "I wouldn't have thought that you would." And then, after questioning the civilians and getting the information out of them, he orders the squad to kill them, and they hesitate. Is the best thing to put it, I think.
it's the trooper that wants to be in charge sort of intervenes to say, saying that the fighters are dead and they should bring in the civilians.
Yeah, but I think the hesitation is from all four
Yeah, all of
humans.
them, and then
And
he
when
intervenes.
Crosshair gives the order again, this one human steps forward and says, "No, you never should have been the leader, blah, blah, blah. We are taking them in for questioning." And then he simply gets a voice from behind where Crosshair goes, "This is why they made me the leader." And then he
That
shoots him on sight.
No, that's after he shoots him. What happens is Crosshair says that those weren't the orders given. So what's saying is the orders were to wipe out the base, wipe everything out, yes, from
Mm-hmm.
Tarkin. But that human is saying no, or that conscript is saying no. What needs to happen? What we're going to do is we're going to, we've killed all the fighters. We are going to take these humans in for questioning. And then Crosshair says, "Is that, those were the orders given?" The guy turns his back on, doesn't matter, and he shoots the guy in the back. And
Good
then
soldiers follow
he
orders.
gets the rest of them to do the same. And that, as he's walking away, he says that as the rest of the squad basically executes the prisoners, all the civilians, with a mixture of weapons, including a flamethrower, which I thought was quite nasty.
A wee bit.
It was like, okay, we're just turning very dark very quickly. That yes, this is aimed at kids, but whoa. this is sort of the foundation of where the reputation of the stormtroopers is coming from. I see.
Just in case you didn't notice, those are the baddies.
Yes. Yeah, especially the black armor.
Yeah, did you notice that the conscripts all still had the clone trooper helmets, whilst Crosshair had a special helmet?
I think Crosshair had a version of his helmet because his helmet looks different as well.
Yeah, but the helmet in the first episodes had a circular cutout for his sights, and this was a the design reminded me much more of a version from the snowtroopers.
Just have a look.
The conscripts still have these phase 2 clone helmets
Yeah,
with
they have
triangular eye slits that run down the nose, and here's a one-piece eye thing and something that looks like a amalgamation of a snowtrooper, stormtrooper, and a first order trooper helmet.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Yeah, the helmet is very much of what it what it looks like. It's I'm just looking at the Funko here to see the differences because there's lots of different because Crosshair's first helmet was white. It had a white skull on it.
Yeah.
It was sort of matching, a little bit of Wreckers and almost Tech's, because Tech's armor, I would say, it's not fully white, but it is white, if you know what I mean. It's got that white look to it.
The off-white color.
Yeah, where the new helmet in the new armor is just that black, and where the conscripts have a version of Stormtrooper armor. Really, that it's the evolution to the Stormtrooper armor, isn't it? It's phase 2. But in full black with a green visor. Crosshairs is a mixture of, what we would class snowtrooper and stuff. So yeah,
it's definitely a design that is very unique, and it's lacking the big cutout that he has in every other helmet until now for his sights.
Yeah. So it is interesting that they that there's a lot more. There's some differences to his. Now his helmet could be a precursor to the Death Trooper helmet, really. Because if you think about it, the Death Trooper helmet looks totally different as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
then the short Trooper helmet, and there seems to be those differences across lots of different things, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it's an evolutionary step.
Here's a one then. Just thinking about it, does that mean the elite squad that sort of Crosshair is in charge of? Yeah, because they're being called elite, right? Forerunners to the Death Troopers. Because the Death Troopers, in some of the reading around the Death Troopers, and I know this is going off track slightly, they were touted as being bigger, stronger, faster versions of the Stormtrooper. So does that mean the Death Troopers are clones?
I wouldn't go that far. I'm trying to think, because the clone troopers never were called stormtroopers.
No, they weren't.
So I'm guessing the conscripts are going to be the foundation of stormtroopers, and maybe the advanced program that is made by our friendly cloners from your neighborhood water planet could actually be then special dark troopers, whatever.
Yeah, it was just in it, sorry, not dark troopers, death troopers. That was it, isn't it? The death troopers are the ones I'm thinking of from Rogue One. Dark troopers are the robots.
Well, all the same if they are clones.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just interesting that that you've got the Death Troopers, which have that totally different helmet as well. It does keep the Stormtrooper helmet a little bit, but it is still different looking. than your standard stormtrooper sort of helmet as well. But it was just, I noticed it and went, I wonder if Death Troopers are clones, because the reference to the Death Troopers and some stuff that I've seen is the fact that they are, they're taller, they're faster than your regular stormtrooper.
Yeah, there's a high possibility, but I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Oh, we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
So the part is nicked by the dragon, and Hunter and Omega are scouting, which I found very hilarious when Hunter is reading the tracks by picking up some dirt, and Omega asks him, "What are you doing?" "I'm reading tracks," and she just picks up some dirt and mimics his motions.
Yeah, and then he does the tracking thing with the dirt and thingies his hands, and then she does the same, but can't see why he did that.
Yeah, there's no explanation what he's trying to achieve by looking at dirt and rubbing it between his hands.
And then they come across, moving a little bit on, they come across where the dragon is either dropped the capacitor or
it's almost depleted of energy, because it had 3 or 4 bars blinking, and now there was only one.
And then, as Hunter sees the capacitor, he sort of creeps up because there's a collection of probably what look like burrows, sort of like that anthill type of thing, isn't it? It was like a sort of that type of thing.
To me, it looked like a convolute collection of alien eggs, but
yeah, well, and he goes out to reach for it, of course, and then he gets smacked by the dragon and knocks him over, and his mask falls off.
And at that point,
Omega then has to rush around trying to find his mask, and then of course she puts it on, but by that time he's fallen unconscious.
Yeah, and then she takes his pistol, the torch, and does this stupid thing that kids do in such situations. They follow the dragon into his den.
Well, I was going to say it's the whole Ripley mentality, isn't it? Follow the monster into the hole.
Yeah, don't harass the dragon when he's sleeping on his hoard.
But she sort of goes in and comes, and finally Hunter wakes up, but finds Omega's gone, so has a bit of a panic and starts calling for her. As she comes across the capacitor, which has been dropped.
And is now completely depleted.
I don't think it was completely depleted. I think it was going off what happens next, which is where...
The thing is, you need to keep in mind how a capacitor works. As long as it's not charged, it's uninteresting to the dragon, because he feeds off energy. So, and since there's no light emitting from the thing anymore, it's possibly completely depleted, but it's still functional.
Right, because I got the feeling that it wasn't the right type of energy, but that could have just been...
Yeah, it looked a bit bent and crumpled, but it seemed to be the right one, because they actually leave the planet later.
Yeah, she's able to put it back in, but that's when she can hear. Sort of, she gets to where it is, and Hunter revives, starts looking around for Omega, and starts calling her name. Omega hears that, and as she turns the flashlight on, she basically the dragon's there. It sort of roars at her. She's holding the pistol but doesn't fire.
Yeah, and then she plays with the dragon like a cat with a laser dot.
Yeah, with the laser thing. She shines the torch, and that calms it down. She pulls it away, it roars, she shines the torch towards down, so she throws the torch to one way, so it goes after the torch because it's got energy, and then she grabs the capacitor and skedaddles out of the
runs for
out of the burrow, and she hands the part back to Hunter, saying that she tracked the dragon and completed the mission.
And she returns him his pistol, which he didn't he didn't realize he had lost.
Yeah. Which is interesting, though, that she actually returned it without having to fire it.
Yeah, and that he was so worried about her that he didn't even care to look at his arms.
Yeah, and then of course we get the bit that we've already covered, which cuts back to Camino and the the elite squad driving back minus a member, and Crosshair reports that that the camp was dealt with and Guerrero had moved on, and that's where Tarkin seemed to be impressed with Crosshair's the fact that he did complete the mission, when his clone brethren didn't, and tells Rampart that the cloning program is an expensive relic of the past, but that it will continue to have a place until the time is right. Rampart agrees, and Tarkin leaves the project in his hands. So that's sort of Tarkin, I would say, being written out a little bit, even though he's probably going to pop up.
Yeah, he doesn't
every now
need to
and
be
again.
on premise to
Yeah.
hold things together. I think we will see him as hologram sooner or later.
Yeah, it's a little bit like it's almost like the way that he took over the Death Star project, isn't it? He took it over from
Yeah.
somebody. Tarkin comes in when the project is successful.
That's a nice project you have there. Would be a
Yes.
shame if anything would happen to it.
Yeah. So and then he disappears off, and then that's where we get the Lamassu Nalsi conversation around the degrading clone material, which opens up wide range of different possibilities.
It leads to various degrees of speculations on what they have planned for themselves to make themselves reliant on the Empire and to be a thing the Empire doesn't want to miss.
Exactly. And then that's when, of course, we get Crosshair returning back to the barracks, formerly the Clone Force 99's barracks, and then it's Crosshair sort of looking at the tally marks on the wall that Wrecker posted. But he ends up looking at them and then falling into thought. So I'm wondering if that's him starting to question, even though he can't break from it.
Or it's the first signs of the
Yeah.
powering up of his inhibitor chip is starting to wear off again.
Yeah. And then we cut back to the ship repairs and taken off from the moon, where Wrecker sort of gets a hold of Omega and tells her to close her eyes and follow him. And that's when
you know
reveal.
what? We forgot one thing from the very start of the episode, which I found was something completely misleading everybody, at least
Which is?
myself. Well, the minute they start to crash land, they get into their safety harnesses. So Wrecker sits next to Omega and starts screaming, "We're going to die! We're going to die!" Looks down to Omega, "We're going to be fine, totally fine." And the thing that really ticked me off for several minutes in this episode was he hits his head, and he complains about headaches all the time, and holds his head at that side where the inhibitor chip is. And all the time he's not going on a rampage now, is he? He's the accident didn't trip his chip now, did it?
Yes. I was wondering what they were playing on that.
I was really scared for a moment that he would go totally mental or something.
I was expecting something to come from that, but something might. You know what they're like with Star Wars at the moment. They like, especially the animated series and the Mandalorian and stuff. They like sort of leaving breadcrumbs, don't they? Putting things in place.
Or mislead us. But that was one of the moments where I think was very heartwarming when he said, "Okay, I can't scream, we're dying, because I need to protect the child next to me, and even though I'm scared shitless, I need to sound very confident."
And then that sort of leads into the end with him showing the room that he'd made for her.
Which is, if I just seen that correctly, basically the rear gun emplacement.
That's what I thought it was as well, the rear gun emplacement. But he'd also given her his Lula.
Yeah, and put up some very decent lighting and a curtain so she could close a door and have a place for herself.
Yes, so they gave her a room. This leads from what you call it, of course, from what Hunter told him earlier in that she didn't have anywhere to sleep.
She doesn't even have a bed of her own, and then now she has a room of her own, and she says, "I never ever had a room for myself."
That's exactly. I'm just looking here about the doll that she has, and it's another reference from Rogue One. Jin Urso had two of they're called Tuca dolls, yeah?
I
Is the
think
name.
those are even older than that. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I've seen those in Clone Wars, the animated series, more than once.
Let's have a look. Yes, Children of Younglings and Ryloth had them in Clone Wars.
Yeah,
And then
so
they
this
appeared
this
in,
this is a very famous toy around the galaxy, obviously.
yes. And Ben and then Jin also had some as well, so they've appeared in Rogue One as well. It's like, oh come on, It's just very interesting that that they seem to be pulling from the same way that Dave Filoni always seems to be pulling, and Jon Favreau pulling from
And I
the
might be
the
wrong
other
here,
stuff.
but I think the toy actually stems from a creature in the universe.
I'm not sure. It doesn't. Just gives the name of the thing, not so much the.
Because I'm pretty sure I've seen a creature that looks like that toy in the Star Wars universe. Though that may be just my imagination.
We probably are. I mean
The only thing they could have made to make it even a more obvious toy from a monster would be a Wampa or a Rancor.
very true. But let's be honest, Disney. I've looked at the toy, and are probably going to churn out a shit ton of them for their stores for people to buy.
Also, because it should be a very easy to make. It's basically a 5 pointy star with a
Yeah,
different color on its head.
exactly.
This is so easy. Everybody could sew himself one.
I've got a suspicion we'll see them turn up and build a bear.
Yeah,
like
and on
like the
Etsy
child
and
did.
eBay.
But on the whole, from an episode point of view, it was laying. There was a lot of foundation being built. I
Yeah,
think.
it's again one of those episodes that in itself isn't too interesting, but it takes things that have started, it puts them on a bicycle and shoves them down the hill. So you know there are things that are to come that will happen. The new squad forming around Crosshair and the four runaways that need to find work, money, and maybe friends.
Yeah, that's where I think it's leading into this week's episode coming, which has been hinted at and has been mentioned.
Yeah, we
Is
had
the episode
seen
with
something from
Fennec?
upcoming episodes in the trailer where they were looking for jobs,
Yeah,
and I think that will be, if not the next, then the one after that.
I think it's in the next one, because I think the next one as well is the episode where we're going to get to meet a young version of Fennec Shan.
Possible.
Which is we know she's coming into the series, so that should be an interesting one. I'm wondering as well, and I think I mentioned it last week as well, and I still have the feeling that we might still get this. I think we still may get a young Boba, and maybe Cad Bane turn up.
That's a possibility, but I think that's still way off.
Oh, it's probably still way off, because I think thinking about just
Meeting young Boba Fett would be something for a season finale, I think. Having Omega and Boba being in one room and being basically brother and sister.
Yeah. But I mean, we've met a young Boba in Clone Wars. I'm just thinking maybe that's where Dave Filoni's able to finish off some of the arc story that he had with Boba, in the Bad Batch, where he can do it, from a story point of view. But we know Boba is playing a major, a bigger role. We've got the Book of Boba Fett coming this year. We don't know who's going to be in it, from a cast point of view, or surprise.
Boba Fett is going to be in it, I hope.
We know Boba, and we know we're going to get Fennec as well. We've got Namei Wang and Tamori Morrison doing it, but it's it'll be interesting to see what Dave does with this, because I know he's not fully involved. He's the sort of the executive producer. It's not like as he was with Clone Wars, where he was very much hands-on, I think, with Clone Wars more. I think this is the same way as he's operating the same way that he did with the Mandalorian. It's him and Jon Favreau who seem to be like the showrunners. And there's other people out there now taking his story or his stuff that he's laid the foundation for and is building on it, because the director and writer of this, it works the same way with Clone Wars, in the respect that Dave was he was like executive producer, he was overseeing the whole thing.
I think we will just have to wait and see. The hard it is.
Yeah. It is, and I mean, let's be honest. It's nice having Star Wars, as we've said. Nice having Star Wars back on.
Yeah, and
Weekly.
especially if it's not shoved down your throat with
Yeah.
this is canon, you need to like it. And no, we don't.
Well, there's been all sorts of rumors popping up this past week to do with the sequel trilogy and Rey and all of that stuff. There's been lots of sort of speculation that they're looking to do a Daisy Ridley. Daisy Ridley's going to come back, and they're looking to do a movie with her, and it's like,
I think the most worrisome rumor I heard in the last weeks was they are redoing the sequels. Please no.
What you mean?
Just don't.
You mean the stuff with Daisy and John Boyega and stuff in? Well, the other rumor I've seen mentioned is that they are going to retcon those because they can do it and say it's in an alternative universe, in an alternative dimension or universe or time.
If they start to go the route of Star Trek with alternative universe, I'm going to be very angry.
Because of Ahsoka and because of the symbols and everything. If you look at the logo for Ahsoka, even though we know nothing about it other than it's coming next year, I think that's the planning for Ahsoka. Is the symbols all behind Ahsoka's name and stuff, is the world between worlds stuff. But you can read that into anything. You see something with lovely circular symbols on it. Could mean anything, couldn't it? So, it's a weird one, shall we say.
Yeah, just we are happy about the things we currently have. We are in happy anticipation about things that comes from the same manufacturer, being the next season of Mandalorian and the Book of Fett, and maybe even every other thing. But we reserve the right to be very annoyed if they fuck it up again.
Definitely. What was interesting this past week as well is Ewan McGregor was doing the rounds of talk shows because he's got a new Netflix show coming out. Or he's got a new Netflix miniseries.
What does he do? Trade spotting?
No, he's playing a fashion designer from the 70s called Halston, I think it is, and you can get rave reviews of him. The character he's playing, a real life person. It's a biopic of sorts. But he was talking to Jimmy Kimmel and they were asking about Kenobi, and he said he filmed a very, very special scene on May the 4th. He didn't say what it was.
I hate teasers like this.
He said he filmed something very special on May the 4th. I'm wondering whether it's either a flashback scene. I think it might be a flashback scene. Because we know Hayden Christensen's in Kenobi. We know he's playing Vader. So I'm wondering if it was a flashback scene with Anakin and him, and maybe Tamura Morrison as Cody or Rex. Because we know Tamura Morrison's going to supposedly in Kenobi as well, playing a clone. The rumor is he might be playing Cody.
I'm not going on any suggestion on this. I'm not going to anticipate anything. This can either go very well or go terribly wrong.
I think it'll go well, but that's just
see. Maybe Christian Heidelson actually gets a chance to redeem himself as a actor if he's not a whining, crying bitch.
I don't think he's going to be the whiny, crying Anakin that we got. But it was just interesting that they mentioned, that Ewan sort of dropped that little bit of nugget this past week, and it was like, oh, come on, mister.
While we're on the subject, the Anakin from the Clone Wars series was much more light than the Anakin from the prequels, to be fair. Excluding the child from the very first, because that's a completely different beast.
Yeah, so yes, the Anakin from the Clone Wars is totally different than the Anakin we got in episodes 2 and 3, which is a shame. But the Anakin from the Clone Wars was a much more better written Anakin, I think.
Maybe it's also because for some reason the makers of episode 2 and 3 felt the need to push the envelope of this is a romantic story too hard.
Yeah.
I guess if they would have just hinted at these things and not made them so very much in your face, maybe it would have been taken a bit longer or better, but that's neither here nor there.
I think, just sort of capping that off, I think that the thing with that is, George was able to go back after episodes 2 and 3 came out and, and develop the character, I think. And that's what helps, I think, more was the fact is that, you had Dave and George side by side developing Anakin during the Clone Wars, during that animated series, more than they were stuck in, we've got 3 movies, we need to go from here to here to here, because I felt the jump from episode 2 to episode 3, and especially the fall in episode 3, seemed very, very quick.
Yeah, the degeneration from promising Jedi to evil villain is a bit much to stomach in 90 minutes.
Yeah, it was very much a very quick fall, a very quick, drop from it. But, it is what it is. They were written at a time when, like we both say, they weren't really written for us, whether they were written for
children.
We can say it, each generation has had their own Star Wars, technically.
And while we're on the subject of the prequels as a last thing for today, did you happen to see the video mashup somebody did on YouTube on the speech of the Emperor where he proclaims the rise of the Empire?
No, I didn't.
There's more than one who did it, but there's one I saw who did it really well with cutting forward and back between the scene from The Bad Batch and the episode 3, where they have Emperor Palpatine going, this is going to be the first galactic empire, and I think they literally just took the audio cue from that movie and put it into The Bad Batch, one to one, because
the one I have seen is a bunch from the beginning of the very first episode of The Bad Batch, which I did mention. Was the fact is, I've seen the comparison of shots, because there's a comparison of shots at the very beginning from that were in episode 3. So like Grievous escaping, in the shuttle and all of that stuff, yeah. There's actual comparison shots that they did as CG'd for The Bad Batch that are shot for shot perfect to what you saw in episode 3.
Well, I'm guessing there will be things that are still crossing over from one to another.
Definitely. So, on the whole, Tim, what did you think?
I think it was a 7 out of 10. Not it was really memorable as a whole, but a interesting plot development, and it has funny moments and comic reliefs without being too on the nose. I still have a little smirky smile on my face when I think about that hunking chunk of a guy sitting there crying, "Oh, I'm going to die! I'm going to die."
I'm about the same. It's sort of a good solid middle episode, shall we say, or a good solid episode that sprinkled story seeds is probably the best thing.
It's still on a level that it doesn't pull the whole series down. Let's put it that way. It's good enough to be within there, and it's not as bad to have something like, oh God, why did they do this?
Yeah, not like the first season of Clone Wars.
Oh, we don't talk of those.
We don't talk of that one. No, we don't. The one that got me sort of closing off was the fact is Wrecker doing, the oh God, we're going to die. That reminds me of and it just popped into my brain when I saw it was Hudson from Aliens going, "Game over, man!
Game over!"
That's what that reminded me of as well.
Yeah, it's a bit like it, playing into the alien look of the planet.
Yeah.
So, with that, I thank Ralph for being my co-host this week. I thank you out there on your radio transmitting devices listening in to us. We will be back again next week with the 4th episode of The Bad Batch. I'm Tim, he's Ralph. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and remain indoors. Good night.